Hey everybody, and thanks for watching Woodcrest Bonsai. Today I'm going to show you how to pot up this Bougainvillea from the 10-inch bulb pan that it's in into a bonsai pot. And Bougainvilleas are beautiful trees. They make fantastic bonsai. They naturally grow in areas that get very dry, and then they also get very wet in the rainy season. So they can take conditions that vary, and where I live in Zone 10 in the US, they flower in the spring predominantly, although you can keep them in flower if you really fertilize them like crazy. They're fairly easy to style, and they are actually classified as a vine. They're a woody vine. And there used to be a plant on the main road which my neighborhood leads to that was up into a pine tree, and it literally was 25 or 30 feet high in the pine, and when it flowered it was just absolutely spectacular. So they make great bonsai. This originally was a 3-gallon landscape plant, so bonsai don't have to be expensive. I paid $7.50 for this thing, and I grew it on a couple years, and I put it into this pot, and I changed the angle because when I purchased it, this part of the trunk right here was almost completely horizontal, and it just looked so, right-hand turn. So when I put it into this pot, I angled it so that this part here was more at an angle, which really softened that horizontal look. So it's going to go into a bonsai pot. This is the pot that I've chosen. And this is a used pot that's already had some trees in it. And a lot of times I take trees out of pots to put them into bigger pots. So you can see this already has the drain holes. And as typical, it has the staples. So you take the mesh, you cut it bigger than the hole, then you add the staple, which is just a little piece of wire. And I always like to put the wire in the holes of the mesh that are closest to the outside of the large drain hole. That secures it so much better. So then the next step is to just remove it out of this pot, root prune it a little bit, and get it into the bonsai pot. So I'm going to change the angle of the camera just a tiny touch. And begin. Now Bougainvillea can have roots that don't really have a tremendous amount of feeder roots. There can be very few roots, and the roots can be very thick and kind of I've seen some Bougainvillea that look like they were lunar landing craft. They only had like 2 or 3 massive roots and not much feeder roots, and sometimes you think, how in the world does that thing even stay alive? But they're tough plants. Once again, a tropical plant that's tender to cold, but otherwise very easy to grow. And today is just a beautiful day. It's just so beautiful. A little chill in the air, but it's going to be just an absolute gorgeous day. So this has some pretty good feeder roots, but it gets kind of knobby. Okay. And I'm not worried about leaving some of this highly organic mix around the roots, because the Bougainvillea will be just fine. This is my homemade organic soil that I use on a lot of trees in training, where I sift leaves, composted leaves. That should be pretty good. Okay. So now let's remove this soil here and put it into the pot and then just see where we're at here. And I want it to lean because I do not want this part to be horizontal. See, if it was horizontal like that, it just does not look good. So leaning like that. And I want to take a little bit off of the bottom. So I've got my concave cutters. I'm just going to cut a little bit off of the bottom. So it sits a little bit lower in the pot. Oh, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Okay. And we have a little bit of a surface root right here that's sticking up a little bit. So I'm going to take it off. And I want it angled up a little bit like that. So when I add the soil, I'll put a little bit of a mound of soil on the back side to angle the tree up more like this. And we're about to do that right now. So I've got my landscape soil, I've got my bonsai soil. So it's going out of the landscape mix into bonsai soil. And this is the medium grade mix. I grow a lot of shohin trees and they get the smaller mix, smaller grain size. Let me back it off and see how it looks. Beautiful. I think I want the front to be a little more like that. There we go. Okay. I think that's in a pretty good position. So now it's just a matter of filling the rest of the pot with bonsai soil. And once it's up to a certain level, I take my chopstick and settle that soil down into the spaces. Especially underneath the soil ball. It doesn't really need it over here because there was nothing over there. And the tree is pretty close to the perfect position. When you're placing a bonsai tree in a pot, you want the trunk to be about 1/3 from one side and 2/3 from the other. And since this tree also moves this way, if I put this over here 1/3, then the tree would be way off the edge of the pot. So that's why I place it over here, so that it balances with the pot. It's a balanced hole. And I need a little bit more in this back corner. Just going to steal some from over here. The roots of a tree want to have microscopic airspace so that they can breathe, because the roots of trees need to have some oxygen exchange in the soil. But you don't want large gaping holes in the soil, because then the roots that are exposed to those large holes will dry out way too fast. You want the air spaces to be microscopic. And so that's why we use the chopstick to make sure that there are no large gaping air holes that can be detrimental to the roots. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit more soil here. When I add my soil, I want the level of the soil to still be about 1/4 of an inch below the edge of the pot, so when I water, it stays in the pot and doesn't just drain off. So that's looking pretty good. So now let's get the gear out of the way. And raise it up a little bit. Maybe even come back a little bit. There you go. Beautiful. And this tree will just get better and better with age. As the flowers begin to fade and the new growth here begins to elongate, since it is a woody vine, I need to continue to pinch out new growth to keep it nice and full. I really like the space between the branches. It's got a very nice trunk movement, and of course when they're in full bloom they're just absolutely gorgeous. So very pretty bougainvillea in a new bonsai pot. So thank you so much for watching. Please like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you haven't already, and leave a comment. Just a beautiful tree, and I'm real happy with the way it turned out. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.